Hello and welcome to this Google Classroom tutorial video hosted by Adam Pearce of Strawberry 7. In the video today I will be showing you quizzes and forms within Google Classroom. To begin with, let's go to classroom.google.com and we'll sign in with our Google account. I'm signed in here as a test member of staff for the purposes of this video. We've got a test class here that we've gone into, and once you've gone into your class, go to Classwork. From here, we can create an assignment that will allow us to create our form or our quiz. So at this point, it's worth giving you a little bit of information around what forms and quizzes are. Google Forms are a great way for you to get quick feedback from your students about a particular topic or a particular subject. This is asking them maybe how they're getting on with the subject or asking them some very general questions. These are questions which are not graded or marked. It's just where you want to get feedback off of the students, or another type of scenario where you don't want to actually assign a mark to the answer. Quizzes, on the other hand, are graded and are marked, and you can actually set these up so that they're even auto-graded and auto-marked to make things even easier. We're going to make two different types on here, and I'm going to show you both different types, the forms and how to make the quizzes. We're going to begin by making the forms. So let's get started and we'll make a form to begin with. Let's go Create, Assignment. I'm going to make a form asking for the students about some feedback around maths. So we'll call this Maths Feedback Form, and I'll give some simple instructions to the students. Please complete the form below and let us know what you think about maths. We then click Create and Form. That will create a Google Forms here for us, and this will open automatically in a new window. There's some various parts here. There's a title. We can put a description here. So I'll put Maths Feedback as my title. We could write a description here about maybe why we're asking students for their feedback and what we want them to specifically think about. So for example, you might not want to say, what do you think about maths in general? You might want to specifically say here, think about the last maths assessment that you did or the last maths phase that you did. Below here are our questions section. Now, there are some various options here as to how you might want to lay the form out, but typically we would always recommend that the very first question should be, what is your name? This will make it a lot easier when we're looking at the forms later on and we're looking at the feedback that we've gotten from the forms. You'll see that as we start to get the answers back and we start to look at it from the results point of view after the forms have been submitted, you'll see how this is beneficial. So we just need a short answer for that, which we've selected here, and we can toggle this button down here to say that this is required. That means that the student has to put something in here before they can submit the form. We've got some options here where we can duplicate this question if we want to, or we could delete the question. And there's also some options here to have a description or a response validation, which are some slightly more advanced options if you want to have a go with those. So we've made our first question, which is great, but we want to make some more. If we look here on the right hand side, there are some various options that we can click on to do some various tasks. So for example, the top one is Add Question. The next one down is to import a question, so we could import a question from another form. We've got a title and description, we've got an image, a video, and we've got a section. And again, sections are a little bit more advanced. Sections are basically where you might want to have an answer to a particular question, then determines whether they go to another section. So for example, you might say, do you need some extra help with maths? And if the student answers yes, you might then take them on to a section where it would say, give us some more information about what you need help with specifically, or they might have some options about what they need help with specifically. Whereas if they answered no, then you could skip that section and just go on to the next question. So let's add another question in. And we can make this question a multiple choice question. and we can say, how do you feel about maths? And then we've got various options down here. So option 1 might be, I don't like maths. Then we can add option 2, it's okay. Then we could add option 3, I love maths. Hopefully most people will pick that option. So those are our different options that we can select on multiple choice, and the students will just be able to tick one of those. Again, we can set this as a required question if we want to. You can set all of your questions as required if you want to make sure that students select something in each section before they submit their form. You can also click up here in the little dots and you can move your answers about. This is particularly useful if you start creating your answers and then you suddenly realise down here that you've forgotten to create the name question, for example. You can create it and then you can drag it up. Let's have a look at some of the other options that we've got here. We've got import questions. This is particularly useful if you've created a form or one of your colleagues has created a form and you want to be able to bring in all of the questions from that form and essentially duplicate that form. You can go import questions. We could click another form here, like this one, for example. We could select, and then we could select which question we wanted to bring in. These questions are just untitled because this is just an example form, but we could tick these and bring in as many as we liked, and then we could bring these in. As you can see, these are just test questions which we've brought in here. The next option down is a title or description. So we can add in literally just a title within the quiz. So we might say, now have a look at this video below, or something like that, as some instructions, some further instructions. We can add in an image, which is pretty self-explanatory, and a video as well. To give you an idea of how to add in a video, the videos which are supported are from YouTube. So I've got one of our recent videos here, and we can just take the, code from there, and we can just go add video. We can go by URL and put the URL in there. The video then comes up as selected, and we could select. We could give the video a title, and then your question below might be, what did you think of the video? Or you might want to ask the student something specifically about the video, about some of the content. And then you could select, again, a multiple choice question. You could select a checkbox question. Drop-down question is very good if you want them to choose one of the right answers. So that's quite useful, similar to a multiple choice. You can also use a linear scale as well if you want to ask them what their opinion is on something from 1 to 5, something like that. Some of the multiple choice grids and tick box grids are a little bit more advanced, and we're not going to go into those in this particular video, but please feel free to try those out if you want to try those out in your form. So we've started to fill out some questions now in some different sections. If we click up here, we have some other options. So the first is to customize a theme, and we can pick a particular color and make the document that themed color. You can also choose a header as well. Now, at the time of making this video, there is a slightly odd fault with Google Forms, whereby if you provide feedback to the students, when the students receive the email, the view button is white, and the background in their email, if they're using something like Outlook, is white as well. So the view button is there, but they can't actually see it. However, if you pick a header, that fixes that problem, and the view button comes back. So it's a bit of a strange fix, but that is the current case. Now, not all headers work, but most of them do. Most of the ones, certainly from the stock headers here, work. You might also just want to have a header to make the form look nice as well. So we would recommend popping a header in just initially whilst that fault seems to be present at the moment at the time of making this video, just so that you don't encounter that problem with the feedback. So let's close the theme now. We can preview the form so that we can see what it will look like from the student's point of view when they fill it out. So here we could write our name in, and we can select our different options here. And the last are the settings for the particular form. Now, don't worry about quizzes too much because we're going to go into that when we actually set up a quiz, but there are some options here which are useful to know. So the first one that I would always recommend is to collect the email address of the recipients. If you don't do this, then again, when you see the responses come in, it will be a little bit difficult to see who has replied and who hasn't. And this helps the system quite a lot with seeing who has been able to hand in their form. So we'd recommend that you always tick this. This response recipients, if you hover over this question mark here, it says the recipients will receive a copy of their responses. Again, we would recommend that you do that because then the students will get a copy and know that they've definitely filled it out. We've had some feedback from some of our customers that have said that they've submitted forms, the students have submitted forms, but they've just been blank when they've submitted them. So this helps make sure that the responses are actually recorded. And then you can set this to always, so that the response will always go to the student when they fill the form out. We've then got a requires sign-in section here, which if your G Suite account has been set up correctly and all of your students are using their sign-ins as they should, then this is something you should definitely turn on so that they have to sign in before they're able to complete the form, and they're only able to sign in with their school account to complete the form as well. You might want to limit the response to 1. Again, we would typically recommend that you tick that as well because the students, you'll only want the students to submit one form rather than multiple forms, and then you have a mismatch of not quite knowing what the response is that they've actually submitted. So again, we'd recommend that you probably tick that in most scenarios. This is a choice here as to whether you allow the students to edit after they've submitted. You might want to do this unless obviously it's a quiz, or if it's something that is an answer that you only want them to be able to give once and you don't want them to be able to go back in and change later. So once you've selected your options here, there is a presentation section as well, and this just gives you some more controls around the presentation. You probably won't ever want to use this, which is the shuffle question order. You probably won't ever want to use that, but the progress bar might be quite useful if you've got different sections, but that only really applies if you've got different sections. You can also have a customized confirmation message as well. This is the default. Your response has been recorded. You might want to change that to say something like, "Thank you so much for providing your feedback." Or you might want to put another personal message to your students there, which is a nicer message that you can personalize to your particular class or your particular students. Then you can click Save, and those options will be saved for the form there. So we've created our form, we've given it all of the various options here, and we've made it how we want it to look. You can see that the form is automatically saved in your drive, so all you need to do is just close this window, or close the tab rather, and it will take you back to your assignment. From here, we've got our form, we've got our title and our instructions. We can set some options over here, and these are the normal sorts of options that you can set for any assignment. So you could set it for multiple classes if you wanted to. You could also set it for specific students in the class or classes if you wanted to. You can control that there. You can assign a points value. We're not going to worry about that particularly for this assessment at the moment. We can just say unmarked. And then you can set a due date if you want to. I'm going to set a due date as next week. And you can set a time as well, but again, you can just set leave just the due date in there. You might want to consider setting a time because we have had some feedback from some students that have said the default time is 23:59, and they've been a little bit confused thinking that they have to submit the form at that time. So you might just want to provide a time as, say, 1500 or something like that, so that even if your students do think that that's the case, they can see it's a time during the day. Topic is if you want to assign it to a particular topic that you've already created in your system. We don't have any topics here, but we could create a topic there. We might make it maths, and then we could assign that to a particular topic. So now we're completely done and we're ready to assign this out to all of the students. We just hit the Assign button here. If you didn't want to assign it just yet, then that's no problem. You can either schedule it for a later date or you can save the draft. I'm going to assign it to the students straight away. Now that's assigned to the students, we're going to go over as a student and we're going to see what that form will look like, and we're going to fill that out. So now I'm in the test class as a student, and we can see here that the new assignment maths feedback form has been posted. We can see that here in the stream. We could also go to classwork and we can see the maths feedback form is available here. So let's click on that and let's click on the maths feedback form. So I'm going to fill this out. I'm going to write my name in first of all. I'm going to say that I love maths. I'm just going to select this option here. I can watch a video and then I can say I learned a lot from it. And then we're going to hit submit. And you can see here that it says a copy of the responses will be emailed to the address. In this case, it's just a test student address, but this would be the student's address just there. So let's hit submit. We get our nice customized message that we put here saying thank you so much for providing the feedback. And that's it, we're done. Let's go back over to the staff member and we'll see what the response looks like. So here we are back as a staff member, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at that response. So let's go to our maths feedback form and we'll click on the maths feedback form. We then click the pencil here in the bottom right and we go to responses, and we can see we've got a little one here saying that we've got one response. We can have a look here at a summary. We can look at the individual question response, or what's most common is to look at the individual response. And you can see here, this is because we ticked the box for recording of the student's email address when they were submitting the form. So that makes it a lot easier for us to be able to click through these. And if we'd had a lot of students' feedback, we would be able to see all of those different students down there by their email address, and we could click on each one. Equally, because we put the name here, it's very easy if you don't know the student's email addresses off the top of your head to be able to flick through using the arrows here, the different records, and be able to see the name at a glance of the student who submitted the form. So from here we can have a look down and we can see what the answers are. We can also print the responses as well. And we can put the responses out to a spreadsheet if we wanted to do some further data manipulation on the responses. We can go back and have a look at the summary. This is quite useful for feedback because, for example, if you were looking at this question, how do you feel about maths, and all of your class had answered and 90% said that they loved it, then that's really, really great. Equally, if 90% had said that they don't like it, then that's something which you would be able to see at a glance here, and you would know where you would need to address your intervention and where you'd need to focus your efforts in there. So these summaries and these questions and these individuals are different tabs that you can go through to kind of really get an idea of your results and how you're going to act on your results that you've gotten back. So we've had a really good look at the Google Forms. Now let's have a little look at the quizzes. And the good news is most of the information that we've had a look at in the forms is also relevant to the quizzes. You'll just see how there's basically some extra options on the quizzes. So we'll go create and we'll say quiz assignment. This is going to create us a Google form, but it's actually going to be set up as a quiz. We'll give this a title, again, like we did before, but we'll call this Maths Quiz this time. And we'll say, please complete the form below. And you can see here it's automatically created as a quiz. So we click on that quiz. And we can fill this out exactly the same way as we did a form. The difference is you'll notice that there's now an answer key section. So that is very relevant for items such as multiple choice. So we might say, what is the lowest number? And we might have our options here. for example. Now what we can do is we can click Answer Key, and we can select which one is the correct answer, and we can assign a points value to that. So we might assign 10 points to that particular answer. We can click Done, or we can even add answer key feedback. So for example, for incorrect answers, we might add some feedback. So we might say, think about the use of the negative symbol, or think about negative numbers. And equally for the correct answers, we can supply some feedback and maybe say, well done, really good finding the use of the negative numbers. So we'll click Done. And you can see that that question is now set up. We can add in another question, just as we did before. And we might want to add in, like I was saying before, the what is your name as the first question, and we can move that to the top like I was demonstrating before. If you've forgotten to add that answer in, that question in, sorry, like I have just there, you can very easily add that in and you can put that up there. We've got all of the same types of options here. If we look at settings, you remember I said before that we weren't going to look at the quizzes section because we were going to look at it now. So if we have a look over there, we can see that this has been made a quiz automatically for us. We've got locked mode on Chromebooks, which you may have noticed was also on the previous page as well. So if your students are all using Chromebook devices, you can turn this option on, and what it will mean is that they can't open other tabs or other windows when they're taking the quiz, i.e. they can't look the answers up on Google. So then we have various other options, such as releasing the mark. We can release it immediately after the submission, which if all of your questions are multiple choice or drop down or checkbox questions and you've got an answer key for all of those, then you can release that straight away. Or you might want to manually review it. The reason you might want to manually review it, even if you have an answer key for everything, is because you might want to just add some feedback to the students before actually releasing it to them. And we'll see that in just a bit. So I will say later after review, and then you'll see how we're going to be able to do that. You've got various options here about where they can see missed questions, correct answers, points values, and you can change those according to what you want to change it. Again, you've got the same type of options here for presentation. And then you've got the same options under general as well. So I'm going to tick these options that I normally tick. I'm going to limit it to one response. And I'm not going to allow them to edit it after submission because this is a quiz. And we'll go save. And we'll add in one more question. I'm going to move that question down here. And we're going to say, what is the higher number? And then we'll just provide some similar ones to what we did before. Okay, and we'll provide an answer key, and we'll do the same as we've done before. Okay, done. I think I've accidentally put a, there we go, that's better. So we'll provide an answer key as we did before. Now what we're going to do is we've got this all saved, so this is all ready to go. We're going to close this tab now and go back to our assignment as we did before. Exactly the same options as we had before. We can assign it to different classes, we can assign it to various students, and we can assign an overall points value. We can set a due date, we can set a topic. We've already got maths because we created it previously when we were creating the form, so we can assign that to maths. We can assign a due date as we did before. I'm not going to assign a due date to this particular one. And then we just hit assign when we're ready to do that, and that will go out to the students. So as before, we're going to switch across to a student account, and then we're going to fill that quiz out, and then we're going to see what that looks like as a staff member. So same as before, we're logged in as a student now, and you can see here, as before, it's in the stream as our maths quiz. We can click there, or again, we can go to the classwork, we can see the maths quiz here. You'll notice how this one is greyed out because we've already submitted it. This one is in blue because it's ready to be taken. So let's open that and we'll click on the quiz. I'll provide my name as before. and I'll select the lowest number, and then I'll select the higher number, and I'll get that wrong, and then we'll hit submit. Okay, there we go. So that's gone off to the teacher. So now let's go back to the teacher and we'll see what that looks like now that it's been submitted. So again, we're back in as the teacher now. So let's go to Maths Quiz and we'll have a look at that. Same as before, we click the pencil and then we can click the responses and we can see that we've got a response there. So it's the same sort of thing. We can go through a summary and we can go to the question and we can go to the individual. Let's have a look at the individual because that's where we're going to be providing most of the information. So we can see here it says score not released because we set that as manually releasing the score rather than automatically releasing the score. Because we had our answer key here, it's also already selected green here to say, yep, we got this one right. But no, unfortunately, we didn't get this one right. And you can see in here, you've got the option to add individual feedback. So when I mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to put a header on because otherwise your students might encounter that slightly odd issue that's around at the moment where they can't view the feedback. That's why, because if you provide the individual feedback here and there's no header on your form, there is a slight fault at the moment where the view button is white with a white background, so they can't actually see it. If you forgot to put a header on your form, or you created your form quite a while ago, don't worry, you can actually put a header on at this point. So for example, we'll just select the jelly bean header that we know works properly, and we'll insert that. And you can actually put it on at this point, and as long as you put it on before you release the score, then that's fine. The view button will work correctly. We've done some testing on that for our clients and that's worked correctly. So here we might say, provide some feedback saying well done. We can provide that individual feedback, and equally here we might point the student to say, remember that thousands are larger than hundreds, for example. And you can provide as much detail as you want in there. And then we click save. We've got some saves pending there, so we hit save, and you can see our feedbacks in there. And then when we're ready, we can click release score, and it will confirm who it's going to. You can put a message in here to the students if you want, and then you go send emails and release. And what will happen is the student will get an email into their mailbox and it will say you've got some feedback and a score on your form, and it will give them that information in the email, and then they'll be able to click that view button and they'll be able to go into their form and they'll be able to see their individual feedback on the form there. So it's quite a long video with quite a lot of information and content in, but I think you'll find it very useful to see how we looked at every aspect of a form and a quiz there, and really our recommendations around the options that you select so that you really get the best experience, not just as staff members, your students also get really good experience when they're filling out the form. As always, if you need any help, please drop some information in the comments below and we'll try and help you as best we can.
Finally, as always, thank you for watching. That concludes this video tutorial. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for more videos you'd like to see, let us know. If you liked this video, please consider leaving us a like and subscribing to our channel for all the latest updates.